6 months after his rescue, Jake Morrison stood before the United Colonies Council on Earth. His hands shook slightly as he held up the glowing blue crystal. The room was packed with admirals, scientists, and politicians, all waiting to hear his story again. "This is what they gave me," Jake said, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. "Not because I asked for it, not because they wanted something from me. They gave it to me so I would remember that kindness exists in this universe. Admiral..." Lisa Parker leaned forward at the council table. She was a stern woman who had spent her life protecting human space from threats. But Jake's story had touched something in her that she thought was long dead. "Mr. Morrison," she said, "you're asking us to believe that an entire alien species helped you without wanting anything in return. In my experience, nobody does anything for free." Jake looked directly at her. "With respect, Admiral, that's because you've never met the Villani. They saved my life because they believe every life matters. They asked for nothing except that I remember their kindness." Dr. Ryan Cole, the head of xenobiology, raised his hand. "The technology you've described is incredible. Their medicine, their tools, their ships. If we could make contact with them again, the benefits to humanity would be enormous." "That's exactly the wrong way to think about this," Jake said firmly. "They didn't help me to start a trade relationship. They helped me because it was the right thing to do. If we go to them now with our hands out, asking for technology and trade deals, we'll prove we're no different from every other greedy species in the galaxy." Senator Helen Ross stood up from the back of the room. "So what are you suggesting, Mr. Morrison? That we spend billions of credits and risk human ships to go find these aliens just to say thank you?" Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he activated a hologram projector. Images filled the air above the council table. They showed the Villani ship, the gentle aliens working on his broken vessel, Kethvar's kind face as he refused payment for his help. "I'm suggesting," Jake said slowly, "that we find them and offer our friendship, not because we want something from them, but because it's the right thing to do." 3 weeks later, Admiral Parker authorized a small diplomatic mission. Captain Amy Stone was chosen to lead it because she was known for her calm judgment and respect for other cultures. Dr. Cole joined the mission to study Villani technology, but only if they were willing to share it freely. Jake went with them as their guide. He had studied the navigation data from his rescue over and over. He knew the route the Villani ship had taken and the energy signatures it had left behind. The journey took 4 months. They followed Jake's clues through star system after star system, always staying alert for signs of the crystal ships. Several times they thought they had found the wrong trail, but Jake's memory and the glowing crystal helped guide them. Finally, they detected the unique energy patterns of Villani technology. They were near a beautiful blue star with 7 planets. As they approached the 3rd planet, 3 crystal ships came to meet them. Jake's heart raced as he saw the familiar, graceful shapes. He spoke into the radio using the few words of Villani language he had learned. "Kethvar, this is Jake Morrison. Do you remember me?" The response came quickly, filled with joy. "Jake Morrison, you have returned. We are so happy to see you alive and well." But as the human ship was escorted to the planet's surface, Jake saw something that broke his heart. The beautiful crystal cities he had imagined were mostly ruins. Thousands of Villani refugees lived in temporary camps. Their faces were sad and tired, so different from the peaceful beings he remembered. Kethvar met them at the landing pad. He looked older and more worn than before, but his eyes still held their gentle kindness. He embraced Jake carefully with all 4 arms. "My friend," Kethvar said, "you have traveled far to see us, but I fear you find us in dark times." Captain Stone stepped forward and bowed respectfully. "I am Amy Stone, speaking for all humanity. We came to thank your people for saving Jake Morrison's life. We owe you a debt of gratitude." Kethvar's expression was confused. "Debt? There is no debt between friends. We helped because it was right to help." Dr. Cole looked around at the refugee camps. "What happened here? Where are your cities?" Kethvar's shoulders sagged. "The Threx came 2 years ago. They are a warlike people who believe might makes right. They wanted our worlds for themselves. We tried to talk with them, to find peace, but they only understand violence. "Can't you fight back?" Jake asked. "We are not warriors, Jake Morrison. We build, we create, we help others. We do not know how to make war. The Threx have taken 6 of our colony worlds. Half our people are dead or missing. The rest of us hide here, hoping they will not find us." Captain Stone felt anger rising in her chest. These gentle beings who had saved Jake without asking for anything were being destroyed by bullies. "How many Threx are there?" "Their fleet has 300 ships," Kethvar replied. "They are strong and cruel. They destroy our cities and take our people as slaves. We have tried to run, but there is nowhere left to go." Dr. Cole knelt beside a group of Villani children who were drawing pictures in the dirt. They looked up at him with large, sad eyes. One of them offered him a drawing of a crystal city with happy families inside. "They draw what they remember," Kethvar explained. "Most of these children have never seen our real cities. They only know the stories we tell them." Jake felt tears running down his face. These beautiful, kind beings were being murdered while the galaxy did nothing. The people who had saved him were dying, and nobody cared. "We have to help them," he said to Captain Stone. She nodded grimly. "I agree. But this is bigger than one diplomatic mission. We need to go back and tell Earth what's happening here." Kethvar shook his head sadly. "Please do not endanger yourselves for us. We do not expect help from anyone. We rescued you, Jake Morrison, because it was right, not because we wanted something in return." Jake grabbed Kethvar's hands. "You saved my life. You showed me that kindness exists in this cold universe. Now it's time for us to show you what humans do when someone threatens our friends." As they prepared to leave, Jake walked through the refugee camps. He saw Villani families huddled together, sharing their small amounts of food. He saw teachers trying to keep children hopeful by telling them stories of better times. He saw healers caring for the wounded with the same gentle touch they had used on him. Every Villani he met smiled at him and asked about his health, even though they had lost everything. Their kindness remained strong even in their darkest hour. On the ship back to Earth, Jake spent every moment writing his report. He included videos of the refugee camps, interviews with survivors, and recordings of Villani children singing lullabies about their lost homes. Captain Stone sent messages ahead to Earth, preparing the government for what they would find. Dr. Cole worked on analyzing Villani technology, not for human benefit, but to understand how such a peaceful people could be so advanced. As Earth grew larger in their view screen, Jake held the blue crystal tight. It still glowed with soft light, a reminder of hope in darkness. He thought about Kethvar's words. "Remember kindness when you are strong." Now humanity was strong, and the time had come to remember kindness. The Villani had saved one human without expecting anything in return. Soon, Jake hoped, billions of humans would stand by their side. The video played on screens across human space. Villani children drawing pictures of homes they would never see again. Kethvar's tired face as he explained how his people were dying. The ruins of crystal cities that had stood for thousands of years before the Threx destroyed them in a single day. President Nathan Brooks watched from his office on Earth as protesters gathered outside. But these weren't angry crowds. They were humans holding candles and signs that said, "Remember kindness," and "Save the Villani." The story of Jake's rescue had spread through every colony, every space station, every human settlement in the galaxy. "Sir," his aide said quietly, "the phone calls haven't stopped. Every governor, every colony leader, even private citizens are demanding we do something." Brooks nodded grimly. He had been president for 8 years, and he had never seen humans unite like this. The story was simple enough that everyone could understand it. Good aliens had saved a human life, and now evil aliens were killing them for it. In the United Colonies Assembly, the debate was fierce. Senator Paul Turner stood at the podium, his face red with anger. "We cannot risk human lives for aliens," he shouted. "Our duty is to our own people first. These Threx might turn on us next if we interfere." Many senators nodded in agreement. They represented colonies that were struggling to survive, places where every ship and every soldier was needed for protection against pirates and hostile environments. Senator Helen Ross stood up to respond. "Paul, I understand your concerns, But we're not talking about strangers here. We're talking about the people who saved Jake Morrison's life. They asked for nothing in return, and now they're being slaughtered. One act of kindness doesn't create an obligation to go to war, Turner shot back. Humanity first. That's what our colonies need to hear from us. The gallery erupted in shouts from both sides. President Brooks watched from his seat, knowing that the most important decision in human history was being made in this room. Admiral Parker stood to address the assembly. Her uniform was covered with medals from a lifetime of protecting human space. When she spoke, the room fell silent. I have fought pirates, raiders, and hostile aliens for 30 years, she said. I have always put human lives first, and I always will. But I have also learned something important. The universe judges us by how we treat those who cannot defend themselves. She activated a hologram showing the Threx fleet. These are not honorable warriors. They are bullies who destroy peaceful civilizations for fun. They enslave children and burn cities full of art and music. If we do nothing, we tell every species in the galaxy that humans only care about themselves. Senator Turner shook his head. Admiral, your heart is in the right place, but we have limited resources. Every ship we send to help the Villani is a ship that can't protect our own colonies. That's when Jake Morrison walked to the center of the assembly floor. He had been sitting quietly in the gallery, but now he stood where every senator could see him. In his hands was the glowing blue crystal. Senators, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber, I want to show you something. He activated a personal hologram projector. The air filled with images from his time on the Villani ship. Kethvar gently treating his wounds. Villani engineers working around the clock to fix his broken ship. The moment when they refused any payment and simply asked him to remember kindness. They didn't debate whether to help me, Jake said. They didn't form committees or take votes. They saw someone who needed help, and they helped. It was that simple. He turned to face Senator Turner directly. Sir, you ask what we owe them. I'll tell you what we owe them. We owe them the chance to prove that kindness isn't weakness. We owe them the proof that good people don't stand alone in this universe. Jake held up the crystal so it caught the light. They gave me this so I would remember that kindness exists. But what good is remembering kindness if we don't act on it when it matters most? An old senator from the Mars colonies stood up slowly. Young man, I have grandchildren on the outer rim. If we send our fleet to fight the Threx, who will protect them? Jake's eyes filled with tears, but his voice stayed strong. Senator, if we don't help the Villani, what will you tell your grandchildren about what humans really are? Will you tell them we're the kind of people who let good people die because we were too afraid to help? The chamber was completely quiet now. Jake looked around at all the faces watching him. The Villani didn't save me because I was human, he continued. They saved me because I was alive, and all life is precious to them. They showed me what it means to be truly civilized. Now we have the chance to show them the same thing. He set the crystal on the podium where it glowed softly in the dim light. They offered kindness to one human. One. But that kindness changed everything. It brought us together today. It made us ask who we want to be as a species. President Brooks stood up in his gallery seat. All eyes turned to him as he walked down to the assembly floor. Jake is right, the president said. This isn't about military strategy or resource allocation. This is about what kind of people we are. The Villani are dying because they chose to be kind in a cruel universe. If we abandon them now, we abandon everything we claim to believe about human decency. Senator Turner made one last desperate argument. Mr. President, the polls show that 60% of humans support helping the Villani. But what happens when human soldiers start dying? What happens when Threx ships attack our colonies in revenge? Will that 60% still support this war? Brooks looked at him steadily. Senator, I've learned something in my years as president. Sometimes leadership means doing what's right, even when it's dangerous. Especially when it's dangerous. He turned to address the entire assembly. The Villani saved Jake Morrison because they believe every life has value. Today, we decide if humans believe the same thing. I'm calling for a vote of the full assembly. All in favor of military intervention to protect the Villani people? Hands began to rise across the chamber. Not all at once, but steadily. Senator Ross raised her hand immediately. Admiral Parker nodded and raised hers. Even some of Turner's supporters looked at Jake's glowing crystal and slowly raised their hands. The final count was 847 in favor, 623 against, with 89 abstentions. It was close, but it was enough. President Brooks addressed the assembly one final time. Admiral Parker, you are hereby authorized to assemble the largest military force in human history. Not for conquest, not for expansion, but to protect those who showed us kindness when we needed it most. Jake picked up his crystal and walked out of the assembly chamber. In the hallway, reporters surrounded him with questions. Jake, what do you think about the vote? Are you worried about human casualties? Do you really think this is worth going to war over? Jake held up the crystal, and its blue light reflected off the cameras. The Volani have a saying, he told them. They say that kindness is like light. One small flame can push back a whole universe of darkness. Today, humanity chose to be that flame. Outside the assembly building, the crowds were celebrating. Someone had set up speakers playing recordings of Volani music. Children held signs with drawings of crystal cities. Veterans stood in uniform, ready to serve again. Admiral Parker pushed through the crowd to reach Jake. You did it, she said. You convinced them. Jake shook his head. I didn't convince them of anything. I just reminded them who they already were. Humans don't abandon their friends. We never have, and we never will. He looked up at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, Kethvar and his people were waiting in refugee camps, believing that help would never come. Hold on, Jake whispered to the night sky. We're coming. The mobilization of humanity began within hours of the vote. Admiral Parker stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching displays that showed ships launching from every human world. Massive carriers lifted off from Earth. Battle cruisers emerged from the shipyards of Mars. Even the outer colonies sent whatever they could spare. Captain Tom Richards arrived at Luna Base 3 days after the vote. He was a veteran of the border wars, a calm man with steady hands and sharp eyes. Admiral Parker had chosen him to command the flagship of the largest fleet in human history. The UES Defiance is ready, Admiral, he reported. She's not the prettiest ship in the fleet, but she's tough and her crew believes in the mission. Parker nodded as she looked at the tactical displays. How many ships do we have now, Tom? 2,000 and counting. Everything from dreadnoughts to converted cargo haulers. The Mars Defense Force sent their entire fleet. The mining guilds donated armed freighters. Even civilian volunteers are bringing their own ships. Parker shook her head in amazement. She had expected maybe 500 ships for this mission. Instead, humans were coming from across the galaxy to help people they had never met. What, about supplies? She asked. Captain Richards smiled. That's the incredible part. The colonies are sending more than we asked for. New Shanghai is donating medical supplies for both humans and Volani. The agricultural worlds are shipping food and medicine. The industrial planets are working overtime to produce ammunition and spare parts. On the other side of Luna Base, Jake Morrison worked with a team of linguists and xenobiologists to prepare for contact with the Volani refugees. He had spent every spare moment since his rescue learning their language. Now he was teaching others so the human fleet would have proper translators. The key thing to remember, Jake told a group of officers, is that the Volani value cooperation over competition. They don't understand concepts like military rank or chain of command the way we do. To them, everyone works together because it's the right thing to do. Commander Ellen Price raised her hand. She was the leader of the Special Forces teams that would work directly with Volani survivors on occupied worlds. Jake, what about their technology? Our intelligence reports say they have weapons, but they don't use them. Why not? Jake thought carefully before answering. Imagine you grew up in a family where everyone was kind to each other, where conflicts were solved by talking, not fighting. Then imagine someone broke into your house with guns. You might have a gun in a closet somewhere, but would you even think to use it? Commander Price nodded slowly. They're too peaceful to fight back, even when they're being murdered. Exactly. That's why they need us. We're not too peaceful to fight back. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Threx War Commander Gulthak received reports about the human mobilization with growing anger. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at intelligence data that showed thousands of human ships gathering at the edge of Volani space. How many humans are there? He demanded of his aide. Approximately 40 billion across their colonies, War Commander, but their military is usually scattered for defense. This concentration is unprecedented, Gulthak snarled, showing his sharp teeth. Primitive mammals playing at war. Send them a message. Tell them to turn back or face destruction. The human fleet had gathered at a staging area near the edge of Vallani space. Admiral Parker stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking out at the largest human fleet ever assembled. Ships stretched in every direction, their running lights like a field of stars. Captain Richards handed her a message tablet. "The Threx ultimatum just came in, Admiral." Parker read it quickly. "Turn back or face annihilation, superior firepower, primitive species, interfering in matters beyond understanding." She looked up at Richards. "Standard bully language. What's our response?" Richards grinned. "I took the liberty of preparing." 1. Ma'am. "Dear War Commander Gulthak, come and take it. Signed, humanity." Parker laughed, despite the seriousness of the situation. "Send it." As the fleet prepared for battle, Jake worked with Vallani refugees who had escaped to human space. They had arrived in small groups over the past months, fleeing the Threx occupation. Now they served as guides and advisors for the human forces. HFY had come with the last group of refugees. He was thinner than when Jake had first met him, and his blue skin had lost some of its glow. The war had taken a terrible toll on his people. "Jake Morrison," HFY said as they met in the briefing room, "I cannot believe humans are doing this for us. We are strangers to you. We have nothing to offer in return." Jake held up the crystal that HFY had given him so long ago. It still glowed with soft blue light. "You gave me this so I would remember kindness," Jake said. "Well, I remembered, and I told other humans about your kindness. Now billions of them want to return that kindness to your people." HFY's large eyes filled with tears. "We saved one human, just one. We never imagined it would lead to this." "That's the thing about kindness," Jake replied. "You never know how far it will travel. You saved my life because it was the right thing to do. Now humans are risking their lives because it's the right thing to do." The briefing room filled with human officers and Vallani refugees. Admiral Parker called for attention as the tactical displays showed the current situation in Vallani space. "The Threx have occupied 6 Vallani worlds," she began. "Intelligence reports suggest they have approximately 300 ships, most of them heavily armed. They've turned the Vallani homeworld into a fortress and are using the population as human shields." Commander Price studied the displays. "What about the other occupied worlds?" A Vallani refugee named Sith Nell spoke up. "My family is trapped on the 3rd moon of Valen Cole. The Threx use our people as slaves in the mineral mines. Many are sick and dying." Admiral Parker nodded grimly. "Our primary objective is to liberate the Vallani people. Secondary objective is to drive the Threx out of Vallani space permanently. We're not just fighting a battle here, people. We're making a statement to the galaxy about what happens when you attack peaceful civilizations." Captain Richards raised a question that had been bothering him. "Admiral, what if other species join the fight? Intelligence suggests the Threx have allies." Before Parker could answer, Jake stood up. "Then we'll deal with them too. The word is already spreading through the galaxy. Humans are fighting to protect a species that showed us kindness. Other peaceful species are watching to see what happens." HFY nodded slowly. "Jake Morrison speaks truth. We have received messages from the Quilleth Confederation and the Harmonious Circles. They remember when the Threx destroyed their border settlements. They wait to see if the Threx can be stopped." Admiral Parker felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. This wasn't just about saving the Vallani. This was about whether kindness could survive in a galaxy full of predators. "All ships," she announced over the fleet communication system. "This is Admiral Parker. In 6 hours, we jump to the Vallani home system. We're not going there as conquerors or as empire builders. We're going there as friends, to help people who helped us when we needed it most." Her voice carried across 2,000 ships, reaching hundreds of thousands of human soldiers, pilots, and crew members. The Threx think might makes right. They think peaceful people deserve to be enslaved or killed. Today we're going to show them that they're wrong. Today we prove that good people Don't stand alone in this universe. Jake stood with Kethvar at an observation window, watching the human fleet make final preparations. Fighters launched from carriers to form protective screens. Supply ships distributed final ammunition and medical supplies. Engineers made last-minute repairs to weapons and shields. "Are you afraid?" Kethvar asked quietly. Jake thought about the question. "Yes. I'm afraid we might be too late to save your people. I'm afraid good humans might die today, but I'm not afraid we're doing the wrong thing." Kethvar placed one of his 4 hands on Jake's shoulder. "When we found you in space, dying and alone, some of my crew asked why we should risk ourselves for a stranger. I told them that kindness is never wasted, even if we never see the results." He gestured at the vast human fleet surrounding them. "I was wrong. Sometimes we do see the results. Sometimes one act of kindness can change the entire galaxy." "Admiral." Parker's voice echoed through the fleet one final time. "All ships, prepare for jump. Destination, Vallani Prime. Let's go bring our friends home." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vallani home system like a storm breaking over calm seas. 2,000 ships appeared in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of the blue star. On the bridge of the Defiance, Admiral Parker watched the tactical displays update with enemy positions. "Threx fleet detected," reported the sensor officer. 312 ships in defensive formation around Vallani Prime. "They're not running, Admiral." Captain Richard stood beside her, studying the enemy formation. "War Commander Gulthak is arrogant. He thinks his ships are superior to ours." Parker nodded grimly. "Let's hope his arrogance costs him. All ships, battle formation Alpha. Fighters launch when ready." Across the fleet, human ships moved into attack positions. The converted civilian vessels stayed back to protect the supply ships, while the military vessels formed the spearhead of the assault. From every carrier, fighters poured out like angry hornets. On the Threx flagship, War Commander Gulthak watched the human fleet approach with contempt. His ships were larger and more heavily armed than the human vessels. His warriors had conquered dozens of species. These primitive mammals would learn the price of interfering in Threx business. "Open a channel to the human fleet," he ordered. Admiral Parker's image appeared on his screen. She looked calm and determined, which irritated Gulthak. He expected fear from those who faced him. "I am War Commander Gulthak of the Threx Empire," he announced. "You will surrender immediately and return to your primitive worlds, or I will destroy every one of your ships." Parker's expression didn't change. "I am Admiral Lisa Parker of the United Colonies of Humanity. We're here to liberate the Vallani people from your illegal occupation. Surrender now and withdraw from Vallani space, and we'll let you leave alive." Gulthak's laugh was like the sound of grinding metal. "You dare threaten me? I have conquered civilizations that existed before your species discovered fire. The Vallani are weak, just like you. The strong take from the weak. This is the law of the universe." "No," Jake Morrison's voice cut in as he appeared beside Admiral Parker on the screen. "That's just what bullies tell themselves to feel better about being evil. The real law of the universe is that good people help each other when it matters." Gulthak's eyes widened as he recognized the human who had started this whole conflict. "You! The weak creature the Vallani saved! You should have died alone in space where you belonged!" Jake held up the glowing blue crystal so Gulthak could see it. "They saved me because kindness matters more than strength. Today you're going to learn that lesson." The war commander cut the communication channel and turned to his bridge crew. "All ships, attack formation! Show these mammals what real warriors look like!" The Battle of Vallani Prime began with a thunderous exchange of weapons, fire that lit up the entire system. Threx ships launched massive energy beams that could cut a planet in half. Human ships responded with swarms of missiles and concentrated plasma fire. The first few minutes of the battle seemed to favor the Threx. Their individual ships were more powerful, and several human vessels were destroyed in the opening exchange. But Admiral Parker had expected this. "All ships, execute Plan Delta," she ordered calmly. "Fighters, begin rescue operations." The human strategy became clear. Instead of trying to match the Threx ship for ship, the human fleet split into smaller groups that surrounded and overwhelmed individual enemy vessels. Meanwhile, fast attack ships and fighters broke through the battle lines to reach Vallani Prime itself. On the planet's surface, millions of Vallani prisoners watched the sky light up with weapons fire. In the slave camps, Vallani children pressed. their faces against wire fences, hoping that someone had finally come to save them. Commander Price led a team of Special Forces soldiers in a daring assault on the largest prison camp. Their small ship dodged through the orbital battle, taking hits from Threx fighters, but pressing on toward the planet. "Remember," she told her team, "the Volani civilians are our priority. These people saved one of ours. Now we save all of theirs." The battle raged for 6 hours. Human ships fought with desperate courage, protecting the rescue vessels even as Threx fire tore through their hulls. The Defiance took heavy damage when 3 Threx cruisers focused their fire on the flagship, but Captain Richards kept her fighting. "Admiral," he reported, his voice strained, "we've lost 40% of our fleet, but the rescue operations are working. We've evacuated over 2 million Volani from the planet." Parker nodded, blood running from a cut on her forehead. "What about the other occupied worlds?" "Strike teams have liberated 4 of them completely. The 5th is almost clear, but Admiral—" Richards paused, looking at his tactical display. "War Commander Gulthak is bringing his flagship around for a run at the planet. Intelligence says he has a planet-killer weapon." Parker felt her heart sink. If Gulthak couldn't win the battle, he would destroy Volani Prime, and everyone still on it rather than admit defeat. "All ships," she broadcast, "the Threx flagship is attempting to destroy the planet. All available ships intercept course now." But the Threx flagship was already moving too fast, protected by a screen of cruisers. It would reach firing position before any human ship could stop it. That's when Captain Richards made his decision. "Admiral," he said quietly, "the Defiance can ram the Threx flagship. Our engines are damaged, but we still have forward momentum. It's the only way to stop him." Parker stared at him. "Tom, that's suicide. There has to be another way." Richards smiled sadly. "Ma'am, my grandfather used to tell me stories about humans who gave their lives to protect innocent people. He said that's what separated us from the animals. We don't just fight for ourselves." He turned to address the entire crew over the ship's communication system. "All hands, this is the captain. We have a chance to save the Volani homeworld and everyone's still on it, but it means we won't be going home. Anyone who wants to evacuate to the life pods has 60 seconds. Not a single crew member left their post." "Admiral," Richards said, "it's been an honor serving with you. Tell the Volani that humans remember kindness, even unto death." The Defiance turned toward the Threx flagship, her damaged engines straining to build up speed. War Commander Gulthak saw the human ship coming and tried to change course, but his massive vessel was too slow. The collision lit up the entire system. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire that could be seen from every world in Volani space. Captain Tom Richards and his crew died instantly, but they had saved millions of innocent lives. With their flagship destroyed and their leader dead, the remaining Threx ships began to retreat. Some tried to fight their way out, but most simply fled toward the edge of the system. The human fleet let them go. The battle was won. But the real victory came 3 days later, as Jake Morrison stood in the ruins of a Volani city on the homeworld. Around him, Volani families were reunited with loved ones they thought they would never see again. Children ran through the streets, laughing for the first time in years. Kethvar approached Jake slowly. The old Volani looked exhausted, but happy. In his 4 arms, he carried a small Volani child who couldn't have been more than 3 years old. "Jake Morrison," Kethvar said, "I want you to meet my granddaughter, Lyra Vell. She was born in the prison camps. She has never seen our cities or our gardens. But now she will." The child looked at Jake with large, curious eyes. She held out a small hand, and Jake took it gently. "Thank you," she said in perfect human language. "Thank you for bringing our families home." Jake felt tears running down his face. "You don't need to thank me, little one. We're just returning a favor." A month later, representatives from across the galaxy gathered on Volani Prime for a historic ceremony. The Quilith Confederation had joined the battle during its final hours, as had ships from a dozen other peaceful species. The destruction of the Threx fleet had sent a message throughout space. Bullies would no longer be tolerated. Jake stood with Admiral Parker as they watched the formal signing of the Volani Human Friendship Treaty. But this wasn't just about trade, agreements, or military alliances. This was about something deeper. "Admiral," Jake said, "did you ever imagine it would lead to this?" Parker shook her head. When you first told me about the Volani, I thought you were naive. I thought kindness was a luxury we couldn't afford in a dangerous galaxy. I was wrong. She gestured at the gathering of species representatives, all of them there, because they had been inspired by humanity's stand for justice. You were right, Jake. Kindness isn't weakness. It's the strongest force in the universe because it brings people together instead of tearing them apart. Kethvar joined them at the ceremony platform. He was wearing traditional Volani robes that sparkled like starlight, and his blue skin had regained its healthy glow. "My friends," he said, "we gathered here today not to celebrate war, but to celebrate what comes after war. Peace, friendship, the knowledge that good people do not stand alone." He held up a crystal identical to the one he had given Jake so long ago. But this crystal was larger and brighter, and when he activated it, it projected images of the battle and its aftermath. "This crystal will be placed in our most sacred temple," Kethvar announced. "It will remind future generations that when darkness threatened to consume our people, light came from across the stars. It came in the form of humans who remembered kindness when they were strong." Jake stepped forward to address the gathering. "The Volani saved my life when I was nobody special, just a lost explorer dying alone in space. They didn't know I would become famous. They didn't know saving me would lead to all this. They saved me because it was right." He looked out at the assembled representatives, humans and aliens, standing together in peace. "Today we've proven that the universe doesn't belong to the strongest or the cruelest. It belongs to those who choose to help each other. The Volani offered kindness to one human, and now billions stand by their side. But this is just the beginning." He held up his own crystal, the one that had started everything. "Every act of kindness creates ripples that spread farther than we can imagine. Today, those ripples have become a wave that will transform the galaxy." Years later, when Jake Morrison was an old man serving as Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council of Peaceful Worlds, he would still carry that glowing crystal. Children would ask him about the great battle and the ships that died to save the Volani, but Jake always told them the same thing. The real victory wasn't won with weapons. It was won the day Kethvar decided to save a dying stranger simply because it was the right thing to do. That's when we learned that kindness is the most powerful force in the universe. The crystal would glow softly as he spoke, an eternal reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of compassion can change the course of history. And in the great library of Volani Prime, where the treaty was kept, young beings of a dozen species would read the words carved in stone above the entrance. They offered kindness to one human. Now billions stand by their side. Jake Morrison stared at the red warning lights flashing across his control panel. The small exploration ship shook and groaned around him as another system failed. He had been alone in deep space for 3 weeks now, ever since his engine broke. Down near this forgotten planet, the UES Navigator was supposed to be reliable. It was built for long solo missions to study ancient alien ruins on distant worlds. Jake was good at his job as a xenoarchaeologist. He loved discovering old civilizations and learning their secrets. But none of that mattered now. His ship was dying, and so was he. Jake pressed a button and spoke into his recorder. Day 21. Life support is at 15%. Food ran out yesterday. I tried to fix the engine again, but I don't have the right parts. He paused and looked out the small window at the empty stars. "If anyone finds this log, tell my sister Lucy that I'm sorry I missed her wedding." The distress beacon had been sending signals for weeks, but no human ships came. This part of space was too far from the colonies. Jake knew he would die here alone, just another explorer who went too far and never came back. He was about to turn off the recorder when something caught his eye outside. A shape moved against the stars. Jake rubbed his tired eyes and looked again. Yes, there was definitely something there. A ship, but not like any human vessel he had ever seen. The alien ship was beautiful. It looked like it was made of crystal and light. It moved smoothly through space without any visible engines. Jake watched in wonder as it came closer to his broken ship. He had studied alien ruins for years, but he had never met a living alien before. His radio crackled to life. A voice spoke in broken human language. "Small ship, we see your signals. You need help?" Jake's heart pounded. He grabbed the radio with shaking hands. Yes! Yes, I need help! My engine is broken and my life support is failing! We come to you now. Do not fear. The crystal ship moved alongside the navigator. Jake heard strange sounds as the aliens attached something to his airlock. Then came a gentle knocking on the inner door. Jake hesitated. He had no idea what these aliens wanted or if they were dangerous. But what choice did he have? He opened the airlock door. 3 aliens stood before him, and Jake's breath caught in his throat. They were tall and graceful, with skin that seemed to glow with a soft blue light. They had 4 arms each, and their faces were kind and gentle. The one in front stepped forward and bowed slightly. "I am HFY," it said in careful human words. "You are hurt. We help you." Jake looked down at himself. He was thin from lack of food, dirty, and probably smelled terrible. His clothes were torn from trying to fix the engine. He must have looked pathetic to these beautiful beings. "Why?" Jake asked. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." HFY tilted his head as if the question was strange. "You are alive. You need help. This is enough reason." The other 2 aliens moved past Jake and began examining his ship. They made soft musical sounds as they talked to each other. One of them looked at the broken engine and nodded to HFY. "Your ship can be fixed," HFY said. "But you need food and medicine first. Come with us." Jake followed them to their ship. Inside, everything was smooth and flowing, like being inside a pearl. The air smelled like flowers. HFY led him to a small room with a comfortable bed. "Rest," HFY said. "We bring you food." The food they brought was unlike anything Jake had ever tasted. It was warm and filling, and just eating it made him feel stronger. The aliens also gave him medicine that healed his cuts and bruises. They asked for nothing in return. Over the next 2 days, Jake watched the aliens work on his ship. They were incredibly skilled. They fixed his engine with tools he didn't understand. They refilled his life support systems. They even cleaned his ship and restocked his food supplies. Jake tried to learn more about them. The aliens called themselves the Villani. They came from a world far away, where they lived in crystal cities and grew food in floating gardens. They were explorers too, but they traveled to help other beings, not just to study them. "Why do you do this?" Jake asked HFY as they watched the repairs. "You don't know anything about humans. We could be dangerous." HFY's large eyes looked sad. "In our travels, we have seen much cruelty. Beings who hurt others for gain, beings who ignore suffering. This makes the universe cold and dark." He looked at Jake. "But we choose to make it warm with kindness. Every life is precious." When the repairs were finished, Jake wanted to give them something in return. He offered them data about human space, or samples of human technology, or even his research on ancient civilizations. But the Villani refused everything. "We do not help for payment," HFY explained. "We help because it is right. But we ask one thing of you, Jake Morrison." "Anything," Jake said. "Remember kindness when you are strong. When you have power to help others, remember how it felt to need help. Remember that kindness makes the universe brighter." Jake nodded, feeling tears in his eyes. "I will remember." As the Villani ship prepared to leave, HFY gave Jake one last gift. It was a small crystal that glowed with soft blue light, just like their skin. "So you do not forget us," HFY said. Jake held the crystal tight as he watched their beautiful ship disappear into the stars. He was alive because these strangers had chosen to be kind. They had saved him not for money or trade, but simply because they believed every life mattered. He set course for home, changed forever by the encounter. The crystal sat on his control panel, glowing softly, reminding him of beings who had shown him that kindness was the most powerful force in the universe. Jake Morrison had been ready to die alone in the dark, but instead he had learned what it meant to be truly alive.